My parents sold my $3,900 dream PC to fund my sister's shopping spree, so I moved out, and what I did next threw them into chaos they never expected. Imagine spending 3 grueling years, every spare dollar, every single sacrificed luxury, saving for your ultimate dream, a custom-built PC, a gateway to your future. Then, you come home, and it's just gone. Not stolen by a stranger, but sold by your own parents to fuel your sister's unchecked shopping addiction. The betrayal was a gut punch, but what they didn't see coming was how that one act would shatter our family dynamic, forcing me to finally stand up and reclaim my life. You see, for me, Trevor, tech wasn't just a hobby. It was an escape, a passion that burned bright. Since I was 8, other kids were trading baseball cards, but I was in the garage, eagerly dismantling old computers my uncle brought over. I still remember the sheer elation when I reassembled a Dell desktop and heard that familiar startup sound, the power button glowing blue. I rushed to tell my parents, breathless with excitement. My dad just gave an absent nod, and my mom, well, she just smiled that distant smile. That's nice, honey. Can you tell Megan dinner's ready? That was the story of my childhood. My tech achievements, no matter how monumental to me, were met with polite disinterest. Meanwhile, my sister Megan's every accomplishment, from making the cheerleading squad to a participation trophy at a dance recital, sparked huge celebrations, photo albums, and special dinners. Despite the emotional void at home, my passion for technology deepened. I taught myself HTML in middle school, then Python and Java in high school, often staying late in the school computer lab. Because we didn't have a decent computer at home, my computer science teacher, Mr. Ramirez, became the mentor my parents never were. He saw my potential, gave me extra projects, and eventually wrote a letter that helped me get a partial scholarship to college. College was a revelation. Suddenly, I was surrounded by people who spoke my language, who valued what I did. I joined coding clubs, participated in hackathons, even won an innovation award for an app one developed. For the first time, I felt truly seen, truly understood. After graduation, I landed an entry-level software developer job at Axiom Solutions. The pay wasn't fantastic, but the chance to learn from experienced developers was priceless. My boss, Marcus, quickly took me under his wing, giving me more and more complex assignments. With student loans looming, I made the practical, albeit difficult, decision to move back home. My parents agreed to let me stay rent-free, and in return, I handled all the tech issues, helped with yard work, and contributed to groceries. It felt like a fair deal, a chance to save. And from my very first paycheck, I started saving for what I called the dream machine. I had a spreadsheet, meticulously tracking prices for every component: an AMD Ryzen 9 5900X, an NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3090, 64 gigabytes of RAM, 2 terabytes of SSD storage, a custom water cooling system, a tempered glass case to show it all off. The total came to $3,900. Every single cent was accounted for, justified, earned. 3 years. 3 years of brown bag lunches instead of takeout with coworkers. 3 years of saying no to weekend trips, to new clothes. Every single sacrifice felt worth it when the last components finally arrived. That weekend was one of the happiest of my life. I spent every waking moment assembling it, managing cables, fine-tuning the RGB lighting to a subtle blue. When I pressed the power button for the first time, and the system hummed to life without a single hitch, the sense of accomplishment was overwhelming. This wasn't just a computer. This was tangible proof of my dedication, my discipline. It was the tool that would help me build my future, render complex graphics in minutes, run multiple intensive programs, develop games without frustrating lags. I stayed up until 3 a.m. that first night, just configuring settings, running benchmarks, feeling like a kid on Christmas morning. For the next few weeks, I practically flew home from work, eager to dive into the small puzzle platformer game I was developing. The Dream Machine handled everything flawlessly. This is just the beginning. I told my girlfriend Emily one night over video chat, showing her my game progress. In a year or two, I might be able to go independent, create my own studio. Emily just beamed. I've Never seen you this excited about anything, Trevor. It suits you. I had no idea then how quickly that happiness would be shattered, or that the computer, representing so much, would become the catalyst for the biggest upheaval in my family relationships. To understand what happened next, you need to grasp the deep-seated imbalance in our family. The contrast between how my parents treated Megan and me was stark. While I was told to be practical about my interests, Megan was always encouraged to follow her heart. This might sound trivial, but it showed up in countless ways. When I was 16, I wanted to attend a $600 summer coding camp. I'd saved half the money from my part-time job, but my parents said it was too expensive and impractical. That same month, they spent over $1,000 on dance competition fees and a custom costume. For Megan, no questions asked. For my high school graduation, I got a $50 card. Megan got a MacBook Pro 2 years later. When I needed a car for college, I bought a beat-up 12-year-old Honda with my own savings. When Megan needed one, our parents co-signed for a brand new Volkswagen. I'm not trying to sound bitter, but these experiences taught me self-reliance. Yes, but also established a pattern. Megan's wants were treated as needs, while my needs were often dismissed as mere wants. Megan's shopping habits really started spiraling in college. She was studying fashion marketing, a program my parents fully funded while I worked and took out loans. Initially, it was necessary purchases for her program, designer textbooks, fashion magazines. But soon, it snowballed into an addiction to luxury items, shoes, handbags, clothing from brands that cost more than my monthly student loan payments. Each purchase was justified with some flimsy excuse: networking, opportunities, building a professional image, investing in quality pieces. The first real alarm bell rang when my dad called me, confused about their credit card statements. As I helped him set up online payments, I noticed over $2,000 in charges from high-end retailers in a single month. When I mentioned it, he got defensive. "Your sister is establishing herself in a competitive industry, Trevor. These are investments in her future," he said, quickly closing the browser tab. A few months later, my mom called in a panic. Their credit card was declined at a restaurant. Again, Megan's shopping was the culprit. They'd hit their limit. This time, my parents admitted they were concerned, but insisted they didn't want to stifle her potential by restricting her financially. "Maybe you could talk to her about budgeting," Mom suggested, as if Megan and I were close confidants rather than increasingly estranged siblings. I tried. One Sunday dinner, I casually brought up a budgeting app one was using. "It's really helped me track expenses and save for things I want," I said, looking meaningfully at Megan. She just rolled her eyes. "Some of us have to maintain a certain appearance for our careers, Trevor. Not everyone can wear the same 3 hoodies and jeans to work." My parents laughed, as if she'd made a clever joke, not insulted me and my profession. The situation only worsened when Megan graduated and moved back home, too. She had a part-time job at a boutique, paying barely above minimum wage, but her shopping didn't slow. If anything, it accelerated, fueled by insider tips on sample sales. My parents' financial strain became painfully obvious. Dad, usually meticulous about the lawn, let it go. Mom started clipping coupons, shopping at discount stores. They even canceled their annual vacation to the lake house, a tradition since I was a child. Yet, Megan's shopping bags kept appearing. New shoes, new dresses, new everything. One evening, I overheard an argument in their bedroom. My mom was crying. "We can't keep doing this, Robert. The retirement account is already down $30,000. Dad's voice was low. "What am I supposed to do, Linda? Tell her no? You know how she gets. It's just a rough patch. Once she gets established, things will turn around." Listening to this, I felt sick. Later that week, I tried one more time to have a serious conversation. I sat them down at the kitchen table after Megan had gone out. "I'm worried about you guys," I began. "And I'm worried about Megan. I think she might have a shopping addiction, and it's affecting everyone." Dad's face hardened. "Don't be dramatic, Trevor. Your sister just has different priorities than you do." "Different priorities? Dad, you and Mom are draining your retirement to fund her shopping sprees. That's not different priorities. That's a serious problem." Mom reached over, patting my hand condescendingly. We appreciate your concern, honey, but we're the parents. We know what we're doing. Have you considered family financial counseling? Or maybe Megan could talk to someone about why she feels the need to shop so much. Dad's voice rose. Now you're suggesting your sister needs therapy? Just because she enjoys nice things? Not everyone wants to stare at computer screens all day and live like a monk. The conversation spiraled, my concerns dismissed as jealousy and misunderstanding. I left the table, frustrated and helpless, unaware that the worst was yet to come. The weekend everything fell apart started innocently enough. Emily and I had been dating for about 6 months, and she invited me to a friend's wedding in Chicago, our first weekend trip together. I was so excited for the getaway. I left Friday afternoon, promising my parents I'd be back Sunday evening. The wedding was beautiful, and spending uninterrupted time with Emily only deepened our connection. Driving back that Sunday, I chatted excitedly about my game project. I think I figured out the physics issue I was having with the gravity shifts. I told her, can't wait to implement it and see if it works. Emily smiled. Look at you, all passionate and glowy when you talk about your game. We kissed goodbye in the driveway, and I headed inside, my mind already racing towards the coding session I was planning. The moment I opened my bedroom door, I knew something was wrong. The air in the room felt different. My eyes darted to my desk, where the dream machine should have been humming in sleep mode. The space was empty. The dual monitors were still there, but the tower was gone. My keyboard and mouse had been pushed aside, the tangle of cables lying limp, without purpose. For a moment, I stood frozen, trying to process what I was seeing. Had there been a break-in? But nothing else seemed disturbed. My laptop was still on the bed, my wallet untouched. I dropped my bag and frantically began searching. Maybe my parents had moved it for cleaning? I checked under the desk, in the closet, under the bed. Mom? Dad? I called out, my voice tight with rising panic. I found them in the living room, watching television, looking perfectly relaxed. Hey honey, how was the wedding? Mom asked, not even looking away from her show. Where's my computer? I asked, my heart hammering. Dad muted the television and exchanged a glance with Mom. Oh, that, he said, casually, like he was talking about an old newspaper. We had to sell it. The casualness of his words, the sheer disregard, made my blood run cold. You what? We sold it to Computer World downtown. They gave us $1,800 for it. Not bad, considering it's used equipment. $1,800. Less than half what I'd paid. My custom build. Hundreds of hours of research and assembly. Reduced to used equipment and sold for a fraction of its value. Why would you do that? My voice came out as a whisper, shock temporarily overriding the anger that was beginning to boil within me. Mom finally seemed to register my distress. Well, sweetie, we needed the money, and since you live here rent-free, we thought you wouldn't mind helping out the family. Helping out the family? You sold my property without asking me? That computer cost me $3,900. 3 years of saving. Dad's expression hardened. Don't take that tone with us. We're your parents, and this is our house. Where's the money? What was so important that you had to sell my computer without even talking to me first? Another glance passed between them, this one more uncomfortable. Well, Megan had some expenses that couldn't wait, Mom said vaguely. As if summoned by her name, the front door opened, and Megan walked in, carrying several shopping bags emblazoned with designer logos. She was wearing new clothes I hadn't seen before, a leather jacket that probably cost more than a month of my salary. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. You sold my computer to fund her shopping spree. I could hear my voice rising, but I couldn't control it anymore. Megan looked between us, finally registering the tension. What's going on? They sold my PC to pay for your new stuff. I yelled, gesturing to her bags. She had the grace to look momentarily surprised before shrugging. Oh, well, it's not like you don't have your work computer, too. And you're always saying how you save all your work to the cloud. Her dismissive attitude was like gasoline on the fire of my anger. That's not the point. That was my property that I paid for with my money. It wasn't just for work, it was for my game development, my future. Dad stood up. That's enough, Trevor. What's done is done. We needed the money because our credit cards are maxed out, and Megan needed these things for an important networking event this weekend. Networking event? You mean another party with her fashionista friends pretending to be industry insiders? The words spilled out before I could stop them. Megan's face flushed. You don't know anything about my world. Just because you're content to be some coding drone doesn't mean the rest of us don't have ambitions. Ambitions? You work part-time at a mall, boutique, and spend more than you make. That's not ambition. That's delusion. Trevor. Mom gasped. Apologize to your sister right now. I looked at them. Really looked at them. My mother, defending Megan despite the financial disaster she was creating. My father, willing to sacrifice my property to enable her addiction. And Megan herself, standing there with thousands of dollars in new purchases, paid for with my sweat and sacrifice. I will not apologize, I said. Quietly, a strange, terrifying calm settling over me as I made a decision that had been brewing for longer than I realized. What you've done is theft, pure and simple. We're your parents. Dad said, as if that explained and excused everything. Parents don't steal from their children. Parents don't sacrifice one child's needs for another's wants. Parents don't play favorites to the point of destroying relationships. Now you're just being dramatic. Megan scoffed. It's just a computer. Family is supposed to share. Share. The calm evaporated. Share. I've shared everything my entire life. I've watched you get every advantage, every preference, every benefit of the doubt. I've stood by while you drained our parents' retirement fund for your shopping addiction. But this crosses a line I can't ignore. Mom was crying now. Dad was red-faced with anger. Megan was rolling her eyes as if I was throwing a tantrum over a borrowed sweater. None of them got it. And in that moment, I realized they never would. After the confrontation, I stormed back to my room and slammed the door, something I hadn't done since I was a teenager. My hands were shaking as I pulled out my phone and called Jason, my best friend since college. They did what? He exclaimed after I explained. Sold it without asking? For less than half what it's worth. My voice cracked despite my efforts to keep it steady. Dude, that's messed up. That's actually illegal. That was your property. I know. And the worst part? They don't even see anything wrong with it. They acted like I was being unreasonable for getting upset. What are you going to do? I took a deep breath. I don't think I can stay here anymore. Jason. There was a brief pause before he said, my couch is yours for as long as you need it, man. No questions asked. His immediate, unwavering support loosened something in my chest, and to my horror, I found myself fighting back tears. Thanks. I might take you up on that. After hanging up, I sat on my bed, staring at the empty space where my computer had been. 3 years of sacrifices and planning, gone in an instant. But it wasn't just about the computer anymore. It was about respect, boundaries, and the bitter realization that in this house, I would always come second to Megan's wants. The next morning, I called in sick to work and began a desperate search of local computer stores. Computer World was my third stop. Yeah, I remember that system, said the technician, a guy not much older than me. Sweet build, custom water cooling, right? Don't see many of those come through here. It wasn't supposed to come through here at all, I said bitterly. My parents sold it. Without my permission. Any chance it's still here? He shook his head. Sorry, man. Sold it yesterday afternoon to a guy who was setting up a home animation studio. He got a steal. Honestly, your folks only wanted $1,800 for it. The confirmation that my dream machine was truly gone hit me harder than I expected. On the drive back to the house, I made my decision. I wouldn't live under that roof anymore. When I returned, my parents were in the kitchen. Mom was making lunch. Dad was reading the newspaper, as if nothing had happened, as if they hadn't just betrayed me in one of the worst ways possible. We need to talk, I said, standing in the doorway. Dad lowered his paper reluctantly. If you're going to continue yesterday's drama, I'm moving out, I interrupted. Today, that got their attention. Mom put down the knife she was using to cut sandwiches. Don't be hasty, Trevor. I'm not being hasty. This has been building for years. The computer was just the final straw. Where will you even go? Dad asked, his tone suggesting he didn't think I had options. Jason's offered his couch until I find an apartment. This is ridiculous, Dad exclaimed. You're throwing away free rent over a computer. It's not about the computer. I finally shouted, my composure breaking. It's about respect. It's about the fact that you've always treated Megan's whims as more important than my needs. It's about you stealing my property to fund her shopping addiction while she contributes nothing to this household. Mom started to cry again. We're a family, Trevor. Families help each other. When has Megan ever helped me? When have you ever asked her to sacrifice anything? They had no answer for that. I'm going to pack my things, I said into the silence. I'll be gone before dinner. I headed upstairs and began methodically packing my clothes, books, and essential electronics into suitcases and boxes. As I worked, Megan appeared in my doorway. You're really leaving over a stupid computer? She looked genuinely confused, which only infuriated me more. It wasn't a stupid computer. It was thousands of dollars of my money and countless hours of my time. It was my future. But you wouldn't understand that, would you? You've never had to work for anything in your life. She flinched as if I'd slapped her. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is you draining our parents dry while I watch them destroy their retirement. What's not fair is them selling my property to fund your addiction. It's not an addiction. I need these things for my career. I stopped packing and looked her directly in the eyes. Megan, you work at a mall store making just above minimum wage. You don't have a career that justifies $500 shoes and $1,000 handbags. You have a shopping problem that nobody in this family is willing to acknowledge. Her face flushed with anger. You've always been jealous of me. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Jealous of what? Your mountain of debt? Your inability to support yourself? Your lack of any real skills or direction? No, Megan, I'm not jealous. I'm sad for you. And I'm done enabling this dysfunction. She stormed off, no doubt to complain to our parents about how mean I was being. By late afternoon, Jason arrived with his pickup truck to help me move. As we carried boxes out, my parents made increasingly desperate attempts to convince me to stay. What about your sister? Mom asked as I loaded my final box. This will devastate her. The irony of her concern for Megan's feelings rather than mine was not lost on me. Maybe it's time Megan experienced some consequences for her actions. Dad tried a different approach. Son, we can talk about getting you a new computer. Maybe not right away, but in a few months. It's too late for that, Dad. This isn't just about the computer anymore. It's about years of favoritism and disrespect. As Jason and I prepared to leave, my parents stood in the driveway looking lost and confused, as if they couldn't comprehend how their actions had led to this moment. You don't have to do this, Mom said one last time, tears streaming down her face. I paused before getting into the truck. Actually, I do. For the first time in my life, I'm putting myself first. Maybe you should try it sometime instead of bankrupting yourselves for Megan. As we drove away, I felt a complex mix of emotions, grief, anger, relief, and, underneath it all, a surprising sense of freedom. I was leaving behind more than just a house. I was leaving behind a family dynamic that had been slowly suffocating me for years. You okay? Jason asked after we'd driven in silence for several minutes. No, I answered honestly. But I think I will be. Jason's one-bedroom apartment became my temporary home. His couch wasn't comfortable, but it represented something invaluable, freedom from the toxic family dynamic I'd been trapped in. The first few days were a blur of practical matters, setting up mail forwarding, finding places for my belongings in Jason's already cramped space, and explaining the situation to concerned friends. Emily came over the day after I moved, bringing takeout and a sympathetic ear. As I recounted the whole story, her expression shifted from shock to outrage. I knew your sister was spoiled, but this is another level, she said, shaking her head. And your parents actually defended selling your property. They didn't just defend it. They acted like I was being unreasonable for getting upset about it. She took my hand. You made the right decision, Trevor. No one deserves to be treated that way, especially not by family. Her validation helped solidify my resolve. This wasn't an impulsive overreaction. It was a necessary step towards self-respect. On Monday morning, I went to work as usual, but requested a meeting with Marcus, my boss. I explained my situation without getting into the emotional details. Basically, I've had to move out. Suddenly. and I'm looking for ways to increase my income while I get established. Are there any extra projects or overtime opportunities available? Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying me. Actually, we just landed the Meridian contract, and I need someone to lead the back-end development. It would mean longer hours and more responsibility, but also a 15% pay bump. I was going to announce it next week, but if you're interested, absolutely. I'm ready for the challenge. Good. Let's make it official, then. The pay increase will start with next week's paycheck. That same day, I began apartment hunting in earnest. The rental market was tight, but I caught a break when I mentioned my situation to Barbara, a family friend who had always been kind to me. She owned several rental properties and had a small one-bedroom coming available at the end of the month. It's nothing fancy, she warned when she showed it to me after work, but it's clean, the building is secure, and the location is decent. The apartment was indeed basic, about 600 square feet with dated appliances and worn carpet, but the rent was within my budget, especially with my upcoming raise. I'll take it, I said without hesitation. Barbara lowered her voice. I heard about what happened, Trevor. Your mother called me trying to get me to convince you to come home. My stomach tightened. And what did you tell her? I told her that you're an adult making an adult decision and she needs to respect that. She patted my arm. For what it's worth, I think you're handling this with remarkable maturity. With housing secured, I focused on establishing my financial independence completely. I opened new bank accounts at a different institution. I made sure all my important documents, birth certificate, social security card, passport, were in my possession. I created a detailed budget, accounting for every expense I would now be responsible for: rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, insurance. The financial reality was sobering. Even with my raise, things would be tight for a while. No more saving for luxury items or even modest entertainment. Every dollar would need to be carefully allocated. But as I worked through these challenges, I felt a growing sense of pride. This was adult life. Real adult life, not the subsidized version I'd been living at home. It was harder, yes, but also more authentic and ultimately more satisfying. While I was rebuilding my life, I couldn't help wondering about my computer. On a whim, I posted in a local tech forum, describing my custom build and asking if anyone had seen or purchased it recently. To my surprise, I received a response the very next day. I think I bought your PC, wrote someone with the username Frank Builds. Purchased from Computer World last Sunday. Custom water. Cooling with blue RGB. If it's yours, we should talk. We arranged to meet at a coffee shop near my work. Frank turned out to be a middle-aged graphic designer who lived just a few blocks from my parents' house. The coincidence was almost eerie. It's definitely my build, I confirmed after he showed me photos. I recognized the custom cable management and the slight scratch on the left panel. Frank seemed genuinely distressed when I explained how the computer had come to be sold. Man, that's rough. If I'd known, I never would have bought it. It's not your fault, I assured him. You had no way of knowing. Still, it doesn't sit right with me. Look, I'm using it for work, so I can't just give it back, but maybe we can figure something out. I do some freelance 3D modeling. Maybe you could use my workstation after hours sometimes. At least until you can build a new system. His unexpected kindness brought a lump to my throat. That's incredibly generous. We exchanged numbers, and true to his word, Frank began texting me whenever he wasn't using his home office. Twice a week, I would go to his place after work and have access to my old computer for a few hours. It wasn't ideal, but it allowed me to continue working on my game in a limited capacity. As the weeks passed, my new life began taking shape. I moved into Barbara's apartment, furnishing it sparsely but functionally with secondhand finds. I established routines for cooking simple meals. Instead of relying on my mother's cooking, I learned to do laundry more efficiently and to keep track of household supplies. My parents called and texted frequently. At first, their messages ranged from guilt-inducing, "Your sister cries herself to sleep because you left," to angry, "After everything we've done for you," to conciliatory, "Let's talk about this like adults." I responded minimally, maintaining firm boundaries while avoiding outright hostility. Megan never reached out directly, which didn't surprise me. In her worldview, she had done nothing wrong, so there was Nothing to apologize for or discuss. As my first month of independence drew to a close, I realized something unexpected. Despite the financial strain and the loss of comforts, I was happier than I had been in years. The constant background tension of living in that house had lifted, leaving me with a clarity of purpose I hadn't experienced before. "You seem different," Emily commented one evening as we cooked dinner in my tiny kitchen. "More, I don't know, present. Confident." I considered this as I stirred the pasta sauce. I think I am. For the first time in my life, I'm not constantly comparing myself to Megan or trying to earn my parents' approval. I'm just living my life on my terms. She smiled and kissed my cheek. "It looks good on you." With my basic needs secured, I threw myself into work with renewed focus. The Meridian project was challenging, exactly what I needed to keep my mind occupied and my skills growing. Marcus noticed my dedication and began giving me more responsibilities, including client presentations and team leadership opportunities. "You've really stepped up these past few months," he told me during a performance review. Whatever sparked this transformation, keep it up. What he didn't know was that I was working on a parallel track at night, using Frank's computer during my borrowed hours and my laptop for the less resource-intensive tasks. I continued developing my indie game. The gravity-shifting puzzle platformer was taking shape, with unique mechanics I hadn't seen in other games. On a whim, I submitted an early demo to Indie Dev Showcase, a small but respected exhibition for up-and-coming game developers. To my shock, they accepted it. Even more surprisingly, the demo generated buzz among attendees and caught the attention of a scout from Pixel Pioneer, a publisher known for supporting innovative indie games. "We're intrigued by your concept," said Natalie, the Pixel Pioneer representative who contacted me. "The physics engine is unlike anything we've seen. Do you have a development timeline?" I was honest about my constraints. "I'm working on this solo and currently using borrowed equipment since my development PC was lost. Progress is slower than I'd like. Would investment help accelerate that timeline? We're potentially interested in publishing once it's complete." My heart raced at the possibility. "Absolutely. With proper resources, I could complete it within 6 months. Send us a formal proposal and we'll see what we can do." That night, I worked until dawn preparing a detailed document outlining my vision, technical specifications, and financial needs. I was asking for a $20,000 investment, enough to purchase new equipment, license professional software, and reduce my hours at Axiom to focus more on development. 2 weeks later, Pixel Pioneer agreed to invest $15,000 in exchange for publishing rights and a percentage of future revenues. It wasn't the full amount I'd requested, but it was more than enough to transform my situation. The first thing I did was build a new development PC. Not an exact replica of my stolen one, but an even more powerful system tailored specifically for game development. With the remaining funds, I negotiated with Marcus to work 4 days a week instead of 5, dedicating Fridays entirely to my game. As my professional life flourished, I maintained minimal contact with my family. Barbara occasionally updated me on their situation, which was deteriorating in my absence. "Your parents refinanced the house," she told me during one of our monthly rent check meetings. "From what your mother said, their credit card debt has become unmanageable." I felt a twinge of concern despite everything. "And Megan? Is she still living there?" Barbara sighed. "Yes, and still shopping from what I gather. Your mother mentioned something about her needing a work wardrobe for a new job interview, which apparently required several $100s worth of new clothes." I shook my head, unsurprised, but still disappointed. Some things never change. Then, about 4 months after I'd moved out, my father called with an unmistakable edge of desperation in his voice. "Trevor, I know things have been strained, but we need your help. The property tax bill is due, and we're short. Could you lend us $2,000? Just until next month." The old Trevor would have immediately agreed, dipping into savings to bail them out. The new Trevor paused, considering the implications. "What happened to your emergency fund?" I asked. A long silence followed. "We had to use it for some of Megan's expenses. Let me guess. More clothes, more shoes, more networking events. She's trying to establish herself, Trevor. You don't understand her industry." I took a deep breath. "Dad, I'm not giving you money that will ultimately enable Megan's shopping addiction. That wouldn't be helping any of you. So, you're just going to let us lose the house." His voice rose in anger and disbelief. "You won't lose the house over one late tax payment. But you might if you keep draining your finances for Megan's wants. Have you considered family financial counseling like I suggested months ago?" He hung up without answering. Later that week, Barbara informed me that my mother had called her in tears, asking if she knew anyone who might buy some of their antique furniture. They were apparently selling assets to cover bills. The situation gave me no pleasure, but I recognized it as a necessary crisis. Sometimes systems don't change until they're forced to by circumstance. Meanwhile, my game development accelerated with my new resources. I hired a freelance artist to create more polished graphics and a composer for an original soundtrack. The prototype evolved into a full-fledged game with 30 levels, a distinctive art style, and increasingly complex puzzle mechanics. Pixel Pioneer was impressed with my progress, featuring the game in their upcoming releases showcase and securing coverage from several gaming websites. The buzz was building months before release. Emily, who had been supportive throughout this journey, moved in with me when her lease ended. Our relationship deepened as we navigated this adult milestone together. My tiny apartment felt less cramped with her presence. It felt like a home. "Have you thought about talking to your parents again?" she asked one night as we lay in bed. "Not for their sake, but for yours. For closure." I stared at the ceiling, considering her question. "I don't know if there can be closure until they acknowledge the real issues, and I'm not sure they're capable of that. People can surprise you when their backs are against the wall," she said softly. "And from what you've told me, their backs are definitely against the wall now." I didn't respond, but her words stayed with me, planting a seed that would gradually take root in the coming weeks. 6 months after moving out, I released Gravity Shift through Pixel Pioneer. The game launched to positive reviews, with critics praising its innovative mechanics and challenging puzzle design. Sales exceeded even Pixel Pioneer's optimistic projections, and within weeks I received my first significant royalty payment. The financial success was validating, but the creative accomplishment meant even more. I had taken a personal crisis and channeled it into creating something meaningful. The computer my parents had sold without my permission had been replaced by something better, and the experience had forced me to grow in ways I might never have otherwise. It was during this period of professional triumph that my mother reached out with news that would finally bring our family situation to a head. "Megan's in trouble," she said when I answered her call. "She maxed out 3 credit cards in our names. We're looking at over $30,000 in debt that we can't pay. Your father's talking about bankruptcy." I closed my eyes, absorbing the information. "I'm sorry to hear that. How's Megan handling it?" A pause. She's not well, Trevor. She had a breakdown when we finally cut off her access to our accounts. The doctor says she has a shopping addiction and possibly depression. She's starting therapy next week." The confirmation of what I'd been saying for years brought no satisfaction. "I hope the therapy helps her." "Trevor." Her voice cracked. "We were wrong about everything. The computer, the way we treated you compared to Megan, all of it. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that we see it now." It was the acknowledgement I'd been waiting for, but instead of vindication, I felt a complex mixture of emotions, relief, sadness, and a tentative hope that perhaps real change was possible. "Thank you for saying that," I said finally. "It means a lot to hear you recognize those things. Would you consider coming over for dinner sometime? Just to talk?" I agreed to dinner the following Sunday. Emily offered to come for moral support, but I decided this was something I needed to do alone. Walking into my childhood home felt surreal. The house looked different. Several pieces of furniture were missing, sold to cover bills. My parents looked different, too. Older, more careworn than I remembered. Megan was there, subdued in a way I'd never seen her. Gone were the designer clothes, replaced by simple jeans and a plain sweater. She barely met my eyes as we sat down to a modest meal. "I owe you an apology," she said halfway through dinner, her voice small. "I never thought about how my actions affected everyone else. I was selfish and entitled, and I'm sorry." "What made you realize that?" I asked, genuinely curious. She fiddled with her napkin, hitting rock bottom. When Mom and Dad finally cut me off, I realized I had nothing. No real skills, no savings, mountains of debt, and a minimum wage job. My so-called friends disappeared when I couldn't keep up with their lifestyle. My therapist says I was using shopping to fill an emotional void and to create an identity I thought would make me special. My father cleared his throat. We enabled her for years. We thought we were showing love, but we were actually preventing her from developing independence and responsibility, the qualities we always admired in you, Trevor. The frank admission stunned me into silence. We've started financial counseling, my mother added, and we're making changes. Your father's taken a part-time job on weekends. I'm selling crafts online. We're learning to live within our means for the first time in years. And I'm working full-time now, Megan said. Plus weekends. At a different store. Every cent goes to paying down the debt. I looked around at my family. Humbled, struggling, but finally facing reality. I'm proud of you all for making these changes. They couldn't have been easy. They weren't, my father admitted, but necessary. We almost lost everything, including you. After dinner, he took me aside privately. Your game is doing well from what I've read online. Congratulations. Thank you. It's been a long road. He nodded, looking uncomfortable. I know this doesn't make up for what we did, but I want you to have this. He handed me an envelope. Inside was a check for $1,800, the exact amount they'd received for selling my computer. It should have been much more, he said, but it's what we can manage right now. Maybe someday we can make up the rest. I looked at the check, then back at my father. Keep it. Put it toward Megan's therapy or the credit card debt. I'm doing fine now, Dad. Really, I don't need it anymore. What I needed was for you to understand why what you did was wrong, and it seems like you do now. He blinked rapidly, fighting tears. We do. God, we do. As I prepared to leave, Megan approached me hesitantly. Do you think we could ever be close? Like real siblings? I considered her question carefully. I think we can build something new. Not what we had before, but maybe something better. It will take time and consistency and real change from everyone. But yes, I think it's possible. The relief in her eyes was palpable. I'd like that. Over the following months, our family began a slow healing process. I maintained my independence, but joined them for dinner every other Sunday. They respected my boundaries and never asked for financial help, though I occasionally brought groceries or helped with small house repairs. Megan continued therapy and found a job as an administrative assistant at a marketing firm, not glamorous, but stable with potential for growth. She stuck with it, gradually paying down her debt and learning to find satisfaction in achievements rather than possessions. My parents attended financial counseling and rebuilt their budget from the ground up. They sold their second car, downgraded their cable package, and learned to distinguish between needs and wants. The process was painful, but ultimately liberating for them. As for me, the success of Gravity Shift led to a publishing deal for a second game. I eventually left Axiom to found my own small studio, hiring Jason as my first employee. Emily and I moved to a larger apartment and began discussing marriage and a future together. The computer incident, as we came to call it, had been a catalyst for transformation for all of us. For my parents, it was the beginning of financial responsibility and equal treatment of their children. For Megan, it was the first step toward confronting her addiction and building a sustainable life. And for me, it was the push I needed to establish independence and pursue my true passion. 1 year to the day after I moved out, I hosted a small dinner party at my new apartment. My parents and Megan were there along with Emily, Jason, and Barbara. As we shared a meal in the home I had built with my own efforts, I reflected on how far we had all come. I want to propose a toast, I said, raising my glass, to difficult beginnings that lead to better endings. To learning that our worth isn't determined by possessions or comparisons, and to the understanding that real family means respecting each other's boundaries and supporting each other's growth, not enabling destructive patterns. Everyone raised their glasses in agreement. Later, as the evening wound down, my father pulled me aside. You know, when you first moved out, I was angry. I thought you were being selfish and dramatic. Now I see that it was the most self-respecting thing you could have done. It wasn't easy, I admitted, but it was necessary. You taught us all a valuable lesson, son. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is set boundaries and let people face the consequences of their actions. As I watched my family interact, in my home, changed, humbled, but healing, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't expected to find. The betrayal had been real and painful, but it had ultimately led to growth for everyone involved. The hardest experiences often yield the most important lessons. That self-respect requires boundaries. That enabling isn't the same as loving. That real growth rarely comes without discomfort. And that sometimes walking away is necessary before you can build something better. If you've stuck with my story this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family? Did it lead to positive change, or are you still in the challenging middle of that journey? Drop a comment below. If this resonated, hit that like button and subscribe. For more stories about navigating complex family dynamics and coming out stronger on the other side. Remember, standing up for yourself isn't selfish. Sometimes, it's the catalyst everyone needs to grow. Thanks for listening, and wishing you the courage to create the life you deserve.